What do you think we're expecting from President Macron this evening?
Well, I mean, all options are open. That seems to be the message that's been coming from the French government over the last 24 hours. But the general opinion seems to be that the government and President Macron is probably going to announce curfews of some kind or another, not universally throughout France, but certainly in some of the major cities. You mentioned 10 or so cities where there's been a big spike. Obviously, Paris is going to be the most likely candidate. The question, I think, will be, when will a curfew be imposed? Would it be at 8 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock? Nobody really knows at this stage. Obviously, it's considered extremely important by the government to do something now to break this surge in the number of cases of coronavirus. The death rate hasn't been such a big problem so far, but the surge in the number of cases really has. And particularly among young people, although the infections amongst young people are beginning to spread into the elderly as well. The young seem much less inclined to pay attention to the expressed wishes of the government to rein themselves in, to avoid too much social contact, stop having parties at night, that sort of thing. The intention of a curfew would be to try to put a lid on just that sort of social behavior by the young in particular. Obviously, the big concern, though, will be that whatever measures are introduced, they should not have, to the extent that it's avoidable, a knock-on effect on the economy of the country. So I think it is extremely unlikely that we will see the sort of lockdown measures, national lockdown measures, that we saw earlier this year when it became so important to put a lid on the spread of the coronavirus.
Indeed, Rob. Between March and May, France was locked down in a very strict way. We all lived through it, worked through it, as part of our essential task of informing people about what's going on. People went on holiday. That kind of spread things again. The French obsession with going away at certain times of the year, which was encouraged by the government at this point to try to live life in a normal way. But that, of course, led to a spread of COVID-19 in certain places. And as you pointed out, Rob, there is now a choice, isn't there, that Macron has between the health of the nation and the health of the economy, because any measures that are taken need to have no knock-on effect, as far as he's concerned, on the multi-billion economy of France.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough balancing act that he has to play, faced by every leader in almost every country in the world, it has to be said. We just saw Boris Johnson the other day in the UK struggling with exactly the same equation, trying to get that balance right. Here, the social and economic support from the government has been quite generous so far. The government has said in the last 24 hours or so that will remain to be the case. But there's no doubt that people in France are very worried about their jobs. There was a survey just the other day, 40% of people said they feared that they could lose their jobs as a consequence of the coronavirus. So one of the big knock-on effects is that psychological one as well. The stress in society is enormous at the moment. And one of the things I think the government will try to do through the measures that President Macron announces today will be to try and introduce a sort of trajectory, some sort of clarity, that people will understand where the country stands in the fight against coronavirus, how much longer they're likely to have to put up with this level of psychological and economic stress, and where the light at the end of the tunnel is going to be. It's very important, I think, for Emmanuel Macron to provide that clarity. Otherwise, the risk will be, as we've seen in France in the past, of social unrest, of society ceasing to pay attention to the government and trying to take measures into its own hands.
Indeed, echoes of the Gilets Jaunes movement, which of course we've covered extensively here on France 24, and you and I, Rob, of course, have spoken about many times. Robert Parsons, our chief foreign editor, turning his analysis to what Emmanuel Macron may be about to say to France at 8 p.m. Paris time. A speech will be taking live here on France 24. Rob, thank you very much indeed.